Welcome into your Media Days Craze live stream powered by Gray Television. I'm Baillie Burmaster. The fourth and final day, we have Auburn, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Texas A&M in the mix on this final day. I am also joined by Aaron Mukes and Doc Holliday, and we're going to have another fantastic show. It's really funny because as much as I feel like we want to get away from the storyline that is Nick Saban no longer in the SEC, he just keeps popping back up every single day, no matter the circumstances. And yesterday, he made his bid for the national championship and said it was Georgia and Texas. That got back to some of his former players that happened to be in the building, in which they said, and I thought this was hilarious, that Saban used to tell them, don't take anything from talking heads who are out golfing on their free time. So they kind of said, we're not going to listen to him who's golfing on his free time. But how much weight do you think Saban's words have? Because Saban is a very honest guy, and he's one of the most knowledgeable coaches of all time.
I mean, for me, it shows that he's trying to do his job to the best of his abilities like he's always done as a head coach. And he wants to go into it being not biased. And I probably would have said Alabama just because, he's been there for so long, and he's established so much culture there. And he's a legend. But I think it speaks a lot to the person he is and the kind of man that he is. And I do like the players kind of jabbing back at him. I think that's fun. Alabama has a chance. So I don't think they're really concerned with what he's saying, but it is kind of a fun storyline.
Man, kill that non-biased thing, man. He's the Alabama Crimson Tide legend, man. I think what Saban was saying is like, you all don't stand a chance now that I'm gone. You know what I mean? But now, I understand what he's doing. He's like, I'm supposed to be unbiased. I'm supposed to be, a media person now. But honestly, he's right though. Georgia and Texas and Ole Miss potentially better than Alabama.
Yeah.
But if it was me and I had been there so long, I'm gonna always say, like, I pick Memphis to win.
Yeah.
So if I'm always say I pick Alabama to win. But I understand why he said what he said.
That begged the question after, for me at least, to say, okay, we're in the middle of season and it's coming down to the wire. Is he not going to pick Alabama? Like, this is the preseason. This is all fun. I'll be interested to see the preseason poll from all the media people as well. But, he can say it now and it doesn't really carry a lot of weight. You say that come week 7, it holds a different weight.
Yeah, that tune might shift as we go into the season, especially if they start to play well in Alabama. And you see they might be neck and neck. And if they're neck and neck, that tune shifts a little bit to say, nah, it's Alabama that's going to be there, not only because they have the experience, but because that's my school.
But think about it. I mean, can people in Tuscaloosa really get upset with Nick Saban about anything?
That's my thing. Could Nick Saban do any wrong?
No, I don't. I think in Alabama Crimson Tide eyes, there's nothing wrong he can do unless he comes out on national television and just curses them out and talks really badly about it. But it's Saban. He's a legend down there, and he gave his honest opinion, and he probably doesn't mean it, but to go out and say, he's probably trying to motivate those young men that he helped bring to Tuscaloosa and he helped coach. So I can see it going both ways, but he's supposed to give his honest opinion if, everybody knows that Alabama is not one of the top teams in the SEC this year. I mean, it's Georgia and Texas.
Did you see the embrace? So I really do think the embrace between Jalen Milroe and Nick Saban on the set. Milroe literally ran across the floor to go give Saban a hug, and it was a really cool moment. It kind of speaks to what Saban meant to that team, and specifically Milroe. I thought that was a really cool moment that happened. Nick Saban is the GOAT.
You can never argue it. But it's funny because that still overshadows the fact Kalen DeBoer was on the podium yesterday. Was he anywhere to be found? I'm joking, but also
overshadowed.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's almost like, you divorced me and you left me. Now I got somebody new, but I'm standing here with you, but you run to your ex, and you're like, what am I? I am here now. We have history.
Hello, I'm relevant too.
So yeah. It's hard to even. I haven't even really seen DeBoer out here. Just talked about Saban, but he is the head coach now. So
yeah, it's very interesting. Did you guys catch any of DeBoer's presser yesterday?
I did a little bit.
What were your takeaways?
I don't want to say it was a little lethargic. It really was. He talked about what
buttoned up.
Yeah,
it was
very, very buttoned up. I think he was trying to kind of watch what he said. You don't want to throw any shade. He tried to pay homage to the people that had been there before. He actually gave Kirby Smart some credit. And,
he did.
But it just didn't seem like there was a lot of enthusiasm as far as maybe he just felt a little out of place because Saban is here. This is his first time at SEC Media Days, and maybe he's focused. Maybe he really just wants to not have to worry about that pressure of replacing such a legend. And we know that's going to happen anyways. Every week we're going to talk about it. If they start to lose games, it's going to be like, oh no, he can't replace Saban. What are we going to do? And I think that he might be feeling some of that pressure, and the closer we get to the season, it just might be building up. And I think we saw a little bit of that this week.
Well, he's a different type of personality. You have to understand what he's walking into, man. Those some huge shoes to fill. So he comes ahead. That's his personality. I heard that he's been out trying to meet people and get in front of people and talk to the media and be a lot more accessible than Nick Saban was. But, that's what he has to do. When you're replacing someone like that, and I did it at my job at Memphis. Jarvis Griver, sports director at NBC, Action News 5 for 40-some years.
Yeah.
And I stepped right in. So it's the same thing with DeBoer. It's like, okay, Saban is here. Everybody's loving him. And he's like, but I don't want to draw too much attention to myself. So I think he's trying to stay serious, show everybody that he is focused, that he does understand what Saban has done. But when you look at what DeBoer has done in his coaching profession, I think as a head coach, he's won everywhere he's gone. So I think they have the right man for the job.
Well, and also you have to remember Nick Saban has his own PR person when he was at Bama.
Yeah.
So, that's all new. And you mentioned it, DeBoer, meeting with all the media and whatnot. Yeah, he, from what I was hearing, he was stopping at anyone on Radio Row who wanted to talk to him, doing any interviews he want, just to make it feel like he was accessible. And I do think that's the right way to go about it early on. Another guy that was up there is a first-year coach here in the SEC, Steve Sarkisian. Before we get into Texas, did we like the suit?
I was going to ask you about that. I'm not a lot of people
it's
like
a negative for me. I'll be the first Debbie Downer. It was a little too tangerine.
Yeah.
It was given sun-kissed.
Yeah.
I wasn't a big fan.
It was more like Tennessee orange. It's like, what
was it linen? Like, what was the...
I didn't love the color. But I'm not for super extravagant anyways. I wear a lot of dark colors. You can't tell I'm in all black. But
with polka dots, though.
Yeah, I wore that to match. See,
what did we do? The pinks. What did you do?
Miami Vice.
Oh, man.
Tony Montana. Tony Montana. The last day, man. Tony Montana.
Got to bring it day 4.
Yeah, but I did like what Sark had to say, and specifically talking about bringing back Ewers and what they were able to build and having a guy like that come back and how important that is. Texas is going to be tough. SEC or not, this is a team that played well last year. They talked about that Alabama game. Beating them last year was kind of the jump start of saying, hey, we can play with the SEC now. Can they do it each and every week is going to be what they're, determining whether they can do or not.
Well, go ahead.
No, but just look how deep he is, man. We could talk about Texas being first-year members of the SEC, but they've had SEC talent every year anyway. You can talk about the depth. He has the depth. He has one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and he has all the skill positions, and you have the interior line. So Sark can say whatever, he can say what he want to say, but he understands he has a big dog team coming into a big dog conference.
Well, and he was asked to, obviously he said it point blank, we have the deepest team we've had in years, but someone specifically asked him about Arch Manning, which I thought was really interesting because, Quinn Ewers isn't going anywhere. And remember, at some point, Arch Manning was the third-string quarterback for Texas. And do we think Arch sticks it out, or do we see him transfer? Remember when he was going through the recruiting process, the insane reports that were coming out about how much Texas was doing to lure him to Austin.
I think this past offseason was big when Ewers came back that he didn't go anywhere. Mm-hmm. And I think that says a lot. We have to remember he has a very, very strong foundational support system around him that's in his ear, going to give him the best advice. I do actually think he's going to stick around. I think there's something that he wants to do there, and I think ultimately he stays. It's just we're in a world where you really never know, so I can't say for 100% sure. But I think right now they're in a good position, and I think that he will eventually obviously get his opportunity, and I think he understands that, and he's willing to kind of wait that time out.
Well, financially no one can really lure him away because I think his family's doing pretty well as far as the money is concerned. Yeah. So it's not like NIL money can get him to leave. But I'm surprised that he's still there, because when you're that high level of recruit and that high level of a player, you have those kind of expectations. I'm glad to see that there is some loyalty, that he is staying, but you know, you want to play, man.
Well, isn't that funny? Quinn Ewers did the same thing.
Yeah.
You think that speaks to what Sark's doing, though? Maybe. I mean, there has to be something that's keeping him there.
You know what? I will give Texas its flowers since Sark's took over, because the way they've been – listen, we can sit here and say, yes, they have depth and great players years and years back. It's not true. Otherwise, you would have been winning the Big 12 every year. But really, you're getting rocketed by teams like Oklahoma State. Go look up the records of face-to-face in the last couple of years between OSU and Texas. Now, more recently, Texas has had more success, but I think that is to speak to what Sark has been able to do. He's changed the tide a little bit from the times of trying to think like the Tom Herman era.
Yeah, It was bad. I mean, it was dark days at Texas for a while, and I don't think anybody really saw there was a direction to where they're at now. And now that Sark's been there and he's been able to turn it around, I think the positive, hey, we can get back to where this storied program is supposed to be, is there. But I still think they have to get over the hump. Otherwise, you're always going to have that conversation of, well, they just fall short. They just fall short. We're in a different time in the way we talk about sports and football specifically. Nobody cares that you win 10 games every year anymore. If you're a team that's Oklahoma, Texas, Georgia, Bama, 10 games is cool, but you have to win national titles. And until they do that, they're going to be like that little stepchild, like, hey, you guys are doing your best and good job.
Well, Dusty Dvorak was on yesterday and talking about Oklahoma being in the SEC, and he was like, listen, if they go 8-4, it's a great year for them. And I was like, is it, though? You think OU fans are going to be happy about that in Norman?
They're not used to that. They expect better. And 8 wins for some teams is okay. For teams like Oklahoma, Texas, it's not enough.
You have some college football programs. You understand what it is, man. When you coach in those programs, you have to understand what it is. Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama, Michigan, U.S. No, that's not what we're looking for. We're not mid-tier college football programs. Those are top-tier college football programs. So when you, like you talked about, they expect not even 10 wins, 11 wins, 12 wins, undefeated, national championships, conference championships. That's cool unless it's an SEC championship.
Yeah.
That's the equivalent of a national championship. But other than that, when your programs like that, no, 8-4, 9-3, and all, it doesn't work.
So depending how Quinn Ewers plays this season, he could really etch himself into some history with Texas, like being one of the best quarterbacks, only behind Vince Young and Colt McCoy. That's insane. My question to you guys is, if you get to choose between Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers, who do you take?
I'm going to be honest, maybe I'm a little biased. I'm taking Carson Beck. There is something about, just size, stature, arm strength, all that stuff. But we talked about this the other day. Just the level-headedness, never getting too high, never getting too low. And I know the topic is going to be like, well, he plays with 5-star linemen and 5-star this. And he's always steady. And to me, when you talk about the next level, the quarterback position in the NFL specifically, those guys that are like this, they tend to be the ones that are successful. And I think Carson Beck has that. No knock to Quinn Ewers. I think he'll be fine. But for me, it's Carson Beck.
And I have to agree with you. You got to look at the national championships. You got to look at what he's done. You know, you know how to win. You have the discipline. You have the approach. You know everything it takes in order to not only win, but to lead other grown men, because these are grown men on college football teams with a lot of ego, and they're making a lot of money as well. But so to get these grown men to listen to you and follow you, and you know how to win and they respect you, that's what puts Carson Beck.
I'll do something a little different. I agree with you guys. I think I'm taking Carson Beck, but I think it's because he's healthy. Quinn Ewers has missed a couple games the last 2 seasons because he can't stay healthy. Now, he looked like he might have beefed up a little bit, like put some pounds on and whatnot, but give me health. And I do agree that Carson Beck's just composure, especially in the pocket, fine open playmakers, it can only get better from here on out. Another Georgia quarterback who has made a little bit of a transition, Brock Vandagriff, headed to Kentucky to be with the Kentucky Wildcats. Mark Stoops going into year 12. He is the longest tenured head coach in the SEC. What do we expect from Brock? Because everyone loved him in Georgia. Everyone was kind of sad not to see him more. I mean, obviously you're going to roll with Beck, but what can he do for the Wildcats?
I think it helps them. Obviously, their strength over the past couple seasons has been that defense. And if they can get some more consistency on offense. Remember, this is a team that has now been in bowl games for 8 straight seasons. 2 10-win seasons since Stoops has been there. He has actually turned this Kentucky program around. It's kind of incredible. You talk about the SEC and how many good teams there are. I think Vandergrift gives them some stability. You're talking about a big, highly recruited guy. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to beat out Beck. He went to Prince Avenue Christian in Georgia, which is kind of known for producing some quality quarterbacks. He's a coach's kid. He knows how to work. I think he can give them some stability on the offensive side of the ball. And with a team like they've had over the past couple of seasons, they were number 2 in the SEC against the run last year. They're strong up front defensively. If they can just get some points, sustain drives, I think that team, they could be in for another 8, 9, 10-win season.
They definitely shocked some people last season with how strong they actually ended up being pretty much. Doc, any feelings on what you think Brock can do with Kentucky?
Well, I think he fits perfectly, because he's someone you can trust. Like you said, he's smart. He can control the offense. He can lead people. And talking about expectations, those are the expectations of Kentucky football. If you can get 8 wins, you can get 9 wins, and they understand what it is. They're a basketball school. Kentucky football fans may not want to hear that, but it is what it is. So if we can get a national championship, good. If you can get us into the college playoff, good. We just don't want to be in the domes of the SEC. So Mark Stoops has been able to keep them out of that, and I think bringing in a quarterback like him who can help maintain and control that offense and lead those young Royals out there, it's a good move.
Their schedule, let's run through it. Southern Miss, South Carolina, Georgia, Ohio, at Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, at Florida, Auburn, at Tennessee, Murray State, at Texas, Louisville.
You notice you only said 4 road games. They have 8 games at home this year. That's a huge advantage for any team, especially when you're talking about the SEC, not having to go to some of these tough places. 8 home games. With the new quarterback, new offensive coordinator in Cohen, I think they could have another 8-win season.
With no divisions, how do we feel about how the schedules are lined up? Because some people are getting cupcake schedules in the SEC. Some of them are just stupid, insanely hard. And then others, like how I've been describing them, is waves. Like the non-con is like, I'm like, who are you even playing? I've never even heard of some of these teams. And then it's like, oh, you're at Georgia and at Alabama, and then you're playing whoever, and then you're coming back and it's another gauntlet. Do we like that there's no divisions, and it kind of, do you think it creates an unbalanced field at all?
I think they're going to have to look at how they're constructing the schedule regardless. I was listening to every question yesterday to Florida was, this is the hardest schedule in the country. I looked at the last 6 games. I don't know how they win.
Should we rattle them off for the listeners? It's pretty insane. Them and Georgia have, so let's see, Miami, Samford, Texas A&M, at Mississippi State, UCF, which is not a bad ball club, at Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, at Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, at Florida State.
That is by far, to me, what I've seen so far. That's the toughest schedule in the country. And when you're Billy Napier,
do we feel bad for him?
You're trying to. You're literally going into year 3. You've been under 500 2 years in a row. Now a lot of pressure is on you, and then you get that schedule, and he has to stand up at a podium and say, "Well, I feel really comfortable with this team. We want to challenge ourselves." But do you really want to challenge yourselves that much?
Well, it's scheduling inequality, man. You go without divisions, and you say, the top couple of teams make it to the SEC championship game. But when you look at these schedules and some of the teams that the other teams have to play, and some teams like Ole Miss got like an easy money SEC schedule. So it's scheduling inequality. But what is the right answer? What you had divisions, and you had one division that was tougher than the other at times, and you have people making it to the SEC championship game. But yeah, man, if I'm Billy Napier, I'm like, man, y'all, what I do to y'all?
Y'all trying to get me
fired. Y'all don't want me here, right?
What I do to y'all?
Yeah. I think the thing that's really interesting, just the state of college football in general and the longer football season, Dr. Katie O'Neill, the SEC chief medical advisor, talked yesterday, and she specifically asked about, with the playoff format and it being a longer season, how much can we anticipate more injuries? And she point blank was like, it's just fact that if it's a longer season, you're going to face more injuries. How concerned are we that this is becoming an NFL-like atmosphere? And do we care? Do we want that? Is it not, because we still have the pageantry of college football?
As a fan, I'm not. As a fan, I would not be
concerned. As a player,
I don't.
But think about it. In the NFL,
I don't think the players think about that. As an athlete, I think these players are thinking, I want the opportunity to play at the next level. And this is the closest thing, specifically in the SEC, to the next level. They are preparing their bodies for the NFL. The NFL is a 17-game season, likely to become 18 in the near future. So when they get there, that will prepare them. Having played these long seasons, specifically the teams that go to the playoffs and go far, I think it prepares their body. I don't know that the players are really concerned with it at this level. I think there's too much on the line from a financial standpoint, trying to make it to the next level, that they're not really focused on that aspect of it.
I get that, but at the NFL level, you see them combat adding games all the time.
Yeah, they've made it already.
And even,
but that's the thing, is they've signed that
But
contract.
health is wealth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Longer seasons for college, you're still, once you have one injury, you're really prone to having more.
And I would look at it this way, because right now it is, they're making money too. They've signed their name on the contract, and some of these top draft picks, they know they're going in the first round or the second round. You get to extending these college football seasons, they're like, hold on, dog. I'm trying to stay healthy. I may be making $2 million here, but I'm trying to set myself up and sign this $20 and $30 million. Now, it's good for college football and it's good for these programs and TV money. But when you're a player, you don't. Hey, look, man, I was cool with 10, 11 games when I was playing. Now 15 games, a lot of. It's a lot of football taking place. So you look at that now for somebody that's trying to move up and trying to make a name for themselves. I can see you want more opportunities to shine on the big stage. But if you're somebody like Quinn Ewers and a top player like that, you're like, I don't need to play these extra games.
What I'm curious about that I feel like maybe we haven't talked about enough is the scheduling of the 12-team format and bowl games.
Yep. They're starting on like a Tuesday or something. It's like the 21st of December.
But think about it. If you are the projected first overall pick, and your team's making a run in the playoff, okay? For some reason, you kind of got a vibe you're playing this team, and you're probably not going to win and go to the Natty. Okay, let's just go with me here. You going to sit out?
I think that's been the question for a number of years now. The one thing I think the NCAA has seen is with the bowl games that were irrelevant. Mm-hmm. Players that were going to be projected high draft picks. I'm not playing in the citrus fruit orange whatever bowl.
Cheez-It, Pop-Tart bowl.
Yeah, whatever it is. I'm not playing in that if I know I'm going to be a first-round pick. Now it gives a little bit more incentive because at the end of the day, as an athlete, you want to win. And if you have an opportunity to win or at least showcase your talent at the highest level, it's hard for athletes to just be like, I don't want to play. Now, money's on the line. They can do that. I still think you're going to see some of that, but I think it's going to be less likely to happen now that the playoff format, those games mean something. And even though you may not feel deep down inside that you have a chance to get to the national championship, there's still that what if, man. What if we go on a 3-game stretch and, we win some games and now we're playing Georgia. So I think it's something that has shifted over time, but I do think players at the end of the day still have that competitive edge for the most part. There are exceptions.
Now, I look at it this way because, of course, you want players, if you have a chance to win a national championship, mm-hmm. You want them to continue to want to play and you want them to continue to play. But I know a lot of people are like, hey, championships mean everything, trophies and rings. I'll go back and look. I'll be like, hey, when people win Super Bowls later on in life, what are they doing? Selling them Super Bowl rings to get some money. So it's really about the money and the financial incentives for a lot of these players other than winning some hardware.
And I think it's a fair point because that was kind of my next question of if with the 12-team format, does it take away a little bit of the competitive edge we're talking about? Because think about it. There's room for error. You have some cushion now. You lose a game, you're not going, okay, it's good.
Yeah.
Before you are PO'd. Because you know you're not going to make it, just like Georgia last year.
Special. I think that's really what made college football different than anything is it doesn't matter how good you were. You could be the Georgia Bulldogs and go undefeated and then lose one game, and then you're out of contention. And I think that there's going to be a little bit less of that, and that's unfortunate because the week-to-week games might not mean as much. So there might be a little bit of that kind of excitement, a little bit lost this season, but we won't know until we see it. And I think that the SEC will do their best to try to promote these games and at least try to deliver that big-time feel. But at the end of the day, players and coaches know we still have an opportunity if we lose a game.
I like it this way, though, because in the past, you would know if you're in Alabama, you're Georgia, you're Texas, you're Michigan, you lose one game because their whole goal is winning championships. Yeah. Lose one game, man, it's over. But now on the other end, they're like, okay, we lost the game, but still, it's not over for us. So a lot of them can still stay motivated and stay focused on trying to get to that big dog.
Well, and this helps maybe, you didn't have to do 12 teams. You could have done 6 or 8, but it definitely helps with what we saw last year with Georgia and Florida State.
What about the timing of that? I mean, the year before, the whole college football playoff system is about to change. It blows up in their face with all these undefeated teams.
And you know what? Georgia was valid. Florida State was valid. Everyone was valid.
Yep.
I felt for all of them.
Should have been 6 teams.
Yeah.
They should have just said, we'll make an exception. There should be 6 teams.
Yeah, and you know, it's unfortunate that the Orange Bowl ended up being what it was between Georgia and Florida State because all the players were like, no, we out.
Yeah, why would we play?
Why would we play?
Like,
to help benefit you and your money and your revenue.
Yep. It was a very disheartening situation, and I think what it did, though, it really, I guess, they get it right again, proved college football right. We're going to 12 teams, and this is why. Like, instead of really understanding what the problem was with the original format or if there was a problem, I think no matter what, whether we go to 12, 14, 16, 64, and they do it in basketball, they're always looking to add more teams because it's just about the money for them. You're never going to get it right. Somebody is going to be left out this year that's at 13 or 14 that feels like they deserve to get in, and they're going to be having the same conversations that Georgia and Florida State had.
Yeah. And great point, because I really doesn't matter what you do, because like someone is going to always feel jilted, someone is going to always feel rejected, somebody's going to always feel not wanted. Like, okay, it's top 12. What about us? Look at what we did. I think it's a great opportunity for college football to put a lot more SEC teams in there, because that's the money.
Yeah.
That's the money. That's what everybody wants to see. So that's what it's really about.
Doc, I came across your Twitter the other day, literally yesterday, and you were talking about fashion.
Yeah.
I want to talk about fashion for a second. Best outfit you saw at SEC Media Days this week. I will say this. I am not a fan of the people who are not from Texas throwing on a cowboy hat just to, like, be part of the culture.
Man,
By the way, there's a whole thing between straw and felt hats. They need to get it right. It's not felt hat season. It's not felt hat season. I just want everyone to know that.
Shots fired. A lot of players came here, and a lot of people came with some hats. Look, birthday boy here had a birthday. This is a sharply dressed man. All week long.
Miami Vice.
Hey, all week long, he came sharply dressed. I'm gonna go with my man right here.
I think you should stand up and do a twirl
God
for the stream.
all I can say is God is good. I know I got my heels covered up though. These young fellas with the heels out, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I'm an old guy, boots guy, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, I definitely think he was the flyest on the floor.
We're going to wrap up and take a short break. Before we do that, I want your high of the week and your low of the week. So what was the high point of your week and what was the low point of your week?
Honestly, I'm going to be real honest. I just talked to Arkansas players, and they talked about offensive coordinator Bobby Petrino, and some of the things they had to say about his intensity was insane, about how he just cusses them out and then hugs them. And I really thought that was an interesting moment, especially in today's landscape. I'm going to go with that.
I'm going to be honest with you. Sitting here working with you all.
Oh,
I'm serious. I met you for the first time. You do a great job.
Thanks,
met you
Doc.
for the first time. You do a great job. And then for Gray to put this entire streaming thing together kind of last minute.
Really
And
great.
it doesn't look last minute.
It
It looks extremely good. So this has been a highlight. And the low of my day is it's over. I get to go home tomorrow, though, so, hey.
I'll say my low was the fact I didn't get lunch the first day. I'm a fat girl at heart. I love food. The high was the Dr. Pepper coconut.
I thought it was going to be the cake.
I thought about it, but I'm going with the Dr. Pepper. I just had one again at lunch, and even Lee was like, this Dr. Pepper, this coconut, it's real good.
I took 2 sips, Bailey.
You didn't like it?
I didn't like it either. See? See?
Tough scene. The banana pudding yesterday was also good. All right, enough about food. We're not doing that again. Thanks to Doc and Aaron for joining us. We're going to take a short break, and we'll have more on the other side. Stick with us. Welcome back to Gray Television's Media Day Craze, the fourth and final day of SEC Media Days. We have the likes of Auburn, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Texas A&M, and that is why I'm now joined by Tyler Shaw and Morgan Weaver, who are going to help me with all talk of Aggies. Before we talk about football, we were just talking about this off the camera, and I have to bring it up. There was some chaos that went down with Aggie baseball, and I think if you're a sports fan, you have to hear it. For people who may not know the realm of Aggie baseball and what happened, can you break down exactly what happened?
Okay, so first off, it's been a long summer for Aggies. I mean, there has not been an off season yet because they've made it all the way to the College World Series finals, lost in that third game. But so a 2-week-long trip in Omaha, and then on the very last day, right after they lost. Granted, leading up to this game, there were a lot of rumors surfacing that the head coach at the time, Jim Schlossnagle, would take the Texas job, which wasn't even an open job at the time, but there were also
Texas fired David Pierce the day of the national championship game, that morning of Game 3.
Right, so David Pierce is fired, and now there's an opening. And right after that game, he's asked about it. At the very end of the press conference, a reporter asks, hey, there's some rumors circulating around a certain job, and he gave Jim Schlossnagle a chance to address his future with Texas A&M. And Schloss blew up on him.
What did he say?
He said it was very selfish of you to ask me that.
He attacked the reporter.
Yeah.
He called the reporter selfish, and he said, you shouldn't have asked me. Granted, it was a very valid question. All he had to do was say...
No comment.
Yeah, no comment. I don't want to talk about it.
Well, also, how indicating is it that you get so defensive at one question?
And then he doubled down on it, saying, I can't envision myself taking another job. Or when I took the A&M job, I can't envision myself taking another job again.
Less than 24 hours later, he takes that job, Lisha. She's holding down the fort because me and my other coworker are driving back from Omaha.
Which is
to
how long?
College Station. It was a 12-hour drive.
Yep, I've done it from
And
Lubbock.
in the middle of the drive, the news breaks.
Yeah, the news breaks. I'm like, guys, what are we doing? And then, so they came back that morning. They had a whole welcome back celebration. Ton of Aggie fans are there. Jim Schlossnagle's there. And not even, I guess, an hour later, he goes and meets with CDC from Texas in a Snook cemetery.
Oh, yeah, he didn't even tell his players, too. I
No.
mean, they are welcomed by fanfare. Hey, great run in Omaha. And, yeah, an hour later, like right after he just met with fans,
He's heading to Texas.
oh, he's going to Texas.
Well, and on top of that, there was all this speculation about him recruiting players to Texas, right?
There was, and they
all stayed.
They all stayed. I honestly, I thought that there would be a lot of kind of transferring to Texas. It just happens with the coaching change. But the players are very adamant that no, like we're going to get this done at A&M. Like forget about Texas.
And that's mainly due to the guy they hired, Michael Early, who was an assistant and hitting coach, and they hired him internally, and all the players were like, well, we love him, and we're going to stay at A&M.
They sort of hired him internally. Michael Early went to Texas. He was at that press conference, and he was on the website, and he's wearing his Longhorn gear as an assistant under Jim Schlossnagle at Texas. And then he gets hired back to be the head coach at A&M. So it's been
A lot of drama.
Messy.
We love the drama, though.
I know, like it's so messy. Who knew college baseball could be so messy? How are Aggie fans dealing with it?
They don't like Schloss very much.
No,
Yeah.
not at all, to say the least.
They've never liked Texas, so I mean, all I've got to say is there's got to be a lot of security at that game when they play each other in conference in a 3-game baseball series this year. As far as baseball atmospheres go, that's probably going to be the craziest one you're going to see all year.
Well, yeah, it's a reborn rivalry of sorts between Texas and Texas A&M. How much are you guys reporting on this week the fact that horns down will not be a penalty unless it's taunting?
We definitely talked about it a lot, just how this is not the Big 12. It's going to be allowed in the SEC, and it's not really taunting.
No, I love it. I love when, and I think the SEC gets that too. It's part of what makes football so great is the fan interaction and the players getting in it and the rivalries. And when you have things like horns down, it just fuels a rivalry.
So let's talk about the Aggies football team. Jimbo Fisher, he's out. It's Mike Elko. What can you tell us about Mike Elko, the type of coach he is, and what he's going to bring to this program?
Okay, so far from the players today, they just said there's a whole another level of discipline and accountability within the program, and I think that's the biggest difference that we've seen so far from Mike Elko, and I just think the players respect him a lot. I mean, he knows A&M, he was here as a defensive coordinator, and so he knows the program, he knows what it means to be a part of the 12th man in the Aggie community, and I think the players really respect him and like him.
Accountability was a big word. And they've all done it without trying to take shots at the old regime with Jimbo, but there is a new level of accountability that they've all talked about, that they're being held accountable, and that's kind of really been the big difference around Mike Elko. Very disciplined, and
It's no more talking, we're just going to work.
Yeah. They don't like. There was every single preseason with Jimbo. There was a lot of noise. Oh, top 5 team. They're going to be national contenders. Yeah. There's none of that this year with the Aggies and Mike Elko.
When you look at this team and you see what has happened with Jimbo Fisher, what was the reaction from fans about the $77.5 million buyout?
Well,
that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, and we are still seeing the effects of that because there are some budget cuts around. They've fired a lot of people within the athletic department.
There has to be a lot of discussion about, and hopefully Aggie fans don't come for me, but the reality is for a program that has all the backing to be successful, they haven't really achieved much.
No, they haven't.
And that's the frustration, right?
It is the frustration. They pour so much into it. They have the
stage is set for them.
Yes, it is. Everything is there to be a premier national program. They should be. They expect to be, but it just hasn't come to fruition yet. So it's just one of those. It's a waiting game thing. It's like, when is it going to happen? Because they know it could and it should.
They have the facilities, they have the money, they have the backing, they have the donors that would love to see. I mean, just the 12-man in general. Yeah, they have the talent a lot. They have the in-state recruitment. I mean, it's just up to them to take advantage.
When you look at this roster and the units on this team, where does the strength lie?
I think right now you got to go straight to the defense, this defensive line. They've got in some transfers. Nick Scorton, who's an All-American at Purdue, a hometown kid actually from Bryan, Texas, coming in. And you look at him and Shamar Stewart on the edge, and in the inside, Shamar Turner and DJ Hicks. I think that's going to be the biggest strength, and it starts on the line. And with Elko being a defensive guy, I think their defense is going to be solid.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then, of course, we have Torian York here today, all-freshman linebacker, and he's also a sophomore captain. He made a big move up, replacing Edgerrin Cooper, who went to Green Bay, I believe. So the defense is just the strength of this team. When you look at the team, where does the weakness lie? What are you concerned about?
My biggest question is the offensive line. It's just because
it's always offensive line.
It's been about 4 or 5 years since there's been a consistent offensive line that protects the quarterback. Every year, A&M goes through about 2 or 3 quarterbacks, and they get hurt, and the offensive line fails to open up holes for the run game, and it's just that's been the biggest crutch for them. So they have a new they've got a whole new coaching staff, but a new offensive line coach that is supposed to shore up some holes. So
and offensive lineman Trey Zune took credit for that today. Somebody asked him about the quarterback injuries, and he's like, us as an offensive line unit, we take that personally. We want to, whoever is behind us, we want to protect him. So they know. We've been talking a lot about scheduling within the SEC with 16 teams in no divisions. I want to run through Texas A&M's schedule. Notre Dame, McNeese, at Florida, Bowling Green, Arkansas, Mizzou, at Mississippi State, LSU, at South Carolina, New Mexico, at Auburn, Texas. What are the games you guys have circled this season?
You just said it at your very last one of
November
the
30th.
schedule. I know it's such a long ways away, but that is going to be the game that everyone is anticipating. 2011 was the last time they played that game, and it is such a big rivalry. Quinn Ewers, the Texas quarterback, said yesterday that growing up, his dad would tell him that the Texas A&M game was a bigger deal than Texas OU and the Red River rivalry.
Sark said something yesterday that I just loved, and he was talking about rivalries and whatnot. And he was specifically talking about Texas-Arkansas, but he was like, sometimes I feel like Arkansas hates us more than they like themselves. And I just feel like that's the beauty of college football. So I think that is going to be a very exciting game. I want to hear predictions of where Texas A&M lands for their record this season. Oh, I think they get 8 wins.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
That's very realistic, honestly, and they can get more. But I'm kind of in the wait and see because I really don't know what this team is really going to look like until they start playing. I will say 9 is pretty reasonable, too. When you look at the schedule.
Y'all are kind of crazy. I'm like, they may get 7.
And you know what? That's
fair.
That's fair.
Am I in the minority?
No, you're
Maybe
not.
I'm just a pessimist.
They haven't proved it yet. So
realistic.
It could happen. They're
going to make a bowl game.
They haven't proved themselves. The only reason I say, you might be pushing 9 is because of the schedule.
Yeah.
The toughest games they have, Notre Dame, Texas, LSU, they're all at home. Mm-hmm. They don't really have any true daunting.
It's a hard place to play.
It is. So, they're not going to Alabama. They're not going to Georgia.
It's a very fair schedule considered to what other teams are facing when you look at their schedule. I mean,
Right.
the two hardest schedules I look at are Florida. I mean, poor Billy Napier, that man.
Georgia's.
This might be the last SEC
Correct,
Media
and
Days.
it's not even his fault. It's not even his fault. It's the schedule faults. Georgia's is really hard, but no one talks about it because it's Georgia.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, like they're the top dog to beat. So it's not that hard. But it's very interesting to see how the schedules have all planned out with no divisions and 16 teams and making it work. That it's funny because you have to believe there's going to be teams that are 10-2, and there's going to be a team that's 8-4, but that team might be better. They just have a harder schedule.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see how that plays out with the 12-team playoff. You know, like how much are they going to reward? Is a 9-team or 9-win team able to make the playoff?
Yeah.
You know, if you got 3 losses, are you still a top 12 team? So
It could leave a lot of SEC teams headed to that 12-team playoff format. So we will see. Tyler, Shaw, Morgan Weaver, thank you guys for joining us. We're going to take a short break. We'll have more on the other side. Welcome back. I have Julia Westerman joining us now to talk all things SEC Media Days. This is actually her first SEC Media Days. We were just talking about that.
Yeah.
Have you been to Dallas before?
I have been to Dallas. So actually we were here a little over a year ago when the Gamecock women came here for the Final Four. So it was actually in the Omni. So familiar with the place, but yeah, first SEC Media Days, and it's, I mean, no better SEC Media Days to be the first one for me. So
you brought it up, but I have to ask now, did you cover Dawn Staley and the National Championship run in Cleveland this year?
Yes. So we did a whole 12-day stretch as a sports team out at WIS.
Wow.
Yes. Went up to Albany, covered that, drove to Cleveland, and then spent the rest of the way. And that was my second Final Four. I've just lucked out. They're a phenomenal team.
What can you say about Dawn Staley? The more
What
I
can't
see
I
about
say?
that part, like, I just love her more and more. I think it was at the ESPYs where she was accepting the award, and she basically was like, how can I expect people to speak up and say something when I'm only willing to do a whisper? Like, I want to be the influence on my players that they also have the influence on me. And I was like, yes, like, go off, queen.
My favorite line was the one where she was like, I'm getting paid less to win more. Which is so true. No, she is just a phenomenal coach, but honestly an even better person. And coming from a media perspective, getting in here and just immediately being like, okay, she's right here with us and wants us to be a part of the process. And it goes viral every year when we're on that Final Four stretch of how much time she gives us as local media.
So I used to be in Cleveland, and so I have a lot of connections still in Cleveland who were covering the game.
Yeah.
And they were part of the people on the floor waiting to interview her, and she still stayed and talked to everyone. I'm like, Nick Saban would never, respectfully, no coach in the SEC would ever do that. They'd be like, bye, I don't have time.
Yeah.
And I just think it's really cool. Not only that, but like her influence for women's basketball. We covered the Atlanta Dream in Atlanta.
Yeah.
She was at a game, and she was just having a hell of a time. She was
Well, it's because she follows all of her former players. Like, once you leave the program, you don't leave the program. Like, you are a Gamecock forever, and she's always tweeting about all of them in the league and everything. She's tweeting about everything, but she's always tweeting about her former players and supporting them and all of that stuff. But, yeah, when we were in Cleveland, and, I mean, honestly, the whole stretch when they do that postseason, it's called the car wash. And her SIDs tell us, she's like, hey, everybody set up. She's just going to go down the line. You get about 3 questions, and get them in, but she's going to make time for you. I think it's phenomenal.
Do you have a favorite Dawn Staley story?
Ooh. Well, actually, yes. Her dog, Champ.
Okay, yes.
Champ is very
We've
famous.
heard about Champ.
Like, Champ comes to all of the post-game pressers and everything like that. Like, we see Champ all the time. Now, Dawn Staley lives in a very common area in Columbia. Like, you can see her all the time. And the funny part is you go walking there's a whole walking trail. I walk there all the time. I run into her constantly. I'm just walking on the Riverwalk, and then she has a dog stroller.
Yes, she does.
And so I saw her recently. I never bug her or anything, but she's walking down the road. I'm going the other way, and I'm like, that's a stroller. I can't see who that is yet, but it could be Coach Staley.
It could be Coach Staley.
And then, she's just chugging along, going for a walk. Champ sometimes in the stroller, Champ sometimes out of the stroller. But
depends on what he's feeling that day.
Yes,
I love that.
She is spectacular, and she truly makes so much time for media, which is so cool when you run the best basketball program in the country and you still make that time.
So you come here, you're at SEC Media Days. What is your interpretation of what this event has been like, especially coming here? I believe it's the 4th time it's ever not been held outside of Birmingham. It will go back to Atlanta next year. What's the biggest thing you've noticed while being here?
Well, I covered the SEC dating back to when I was in college, and I should have gone my senior year, but that was during COVID and everything. So it's just been this build-up for a long time in the country now. And they handled this event very, very well for the magnitude of everything that needed to happen this week. And it's been exciting, and just from a personal perspective, having the opportunity to learn about all 16 teams, even though I don't cover all of them, that affords you just such like a wealth of knowledge going into this season, and having that perspective
gives a lot of perspective
what the entire conference is going to look like, and really just helps me as a journalist have more of an insight than just the team that I cover.
And a feel for things. I'm curious how South Carolina fans are feeling about Shane Beaver right now.
There's been a lot of chatter about that this offseason. So a lot of people are riding the train of, oh, he's on the hot seat. But everyone says everyone's on the hot seat. My boss said to me yesterday, unless you're Kirby Smart, basically every other coach in the country could potentially be on the hot seat. So I don't think he is, and we've discussed this in our coverage all week long. I mean, he has one of the toughest schedules in the country, not to mention everyone in the SEC has a tough schedule, but South Carolina's got a gauntlet of a schedule. And I think they're going to work hard at it, obviously, but even if it doesn't shake out the way that they want it to this year, I think he'll be fine this year. And it's year 4. I know people want to just microwave everything and have results immediately, but in this day and age in football, like, there's the margin of people who immediately have success is very, very small.
What I think about is very interesting in college football is there's a lot more grace in this sport than there are other sports. If you look at the NBA right now, you have 3 bad games and they might fire you. That's where we're getting at this point. And then JJ Redick's getting a job and he's never been a head coach. It's kind of insane.
4th grade basketball on his resume.
The only time I can think of that actually happening was when Cliff Kingsbury left Texas Tech and ended up being the head coach for the Arizona Cardinals, kind of falling upwards. So I like that the college game still has some flexibility, and a lot of athletic directors are willing to give these coaches a chance to turn it around. But I think you're right. For Beamer, you're headed into year 4. It's a little bit of a do or die if there's not progression, and very good progression this year. I do think he could be one of those coaches come the end of the season that maybe things don't work in his favor. When you look at, you were talking about their schedule. Let's talk about it. ODU, at Kentucky, LSU, Akron, Ole Miss, at Alabama, at Oklahoma, Texas A&M, at Vanderbilt, Missouri, Wofford, and at Clemson. That stretch from October 5th to November 2nd is insane, actually.
But the thing is before it is tough, too. Because, I mean, Kentucky has kind of become somewhat of a rivalry for them. I mean, Beamer has won 2 straight over the Wildcats, and they're searching for a 3rd. And I've seen both of those games these past 2 years, and it's a good one. So you've got to start off right with that one, and you want to win that game to set yourself up for your first meeting with LSU in several seasons at home in front of your personal crowd. So you got to get through that, and then you have to go to, and you host Ole Miss, I believe, and then you got to go to Tuscaloosa, which
no one wants to go to Tuscaloosa.
No one wants to go to Tuscaloosa.
I don't care if Nick Saban's not there. You don't want to go to. You don't want that smoke.
And that's the thing, is there's so many questions around that. Is you don't know what Kalen DeBoer is going to do yet. You know the Alabama standard, but you don't know what, you're not walking into Nick Saban, like you said. So it's that first front of the season is crazy, and then the back half is just,
What is the key for South Carolina this season to find success on the field?
There's probably several of them, because, I mean, they got a range of ages all over this team. You got Lenora Sellers, who's a redshirt freshman. Obviously, you're coming in on the heels of Spencer Rattler, who honestly, not a lot of people think he succeeded all that much. But
can I pause before you continue telling? Because let's talk about Spencer Sanders for a second. Were you a fan?
I like
Spencer Rattler, not Sanders. Sorry, I'm getting my schools confused. Tomato.
I liked Spencer Rattler a lot, and a lot of people, when he came out of Oklahoma, they were like,
he was controversial. He was controversial before he went to Oklahoma.
They said, "Good luck, have a great time covering Spencer Rattler." And then over the past 2 years, I'm like, I don't understand why people said that. He is a phenomenal person, a phenomenal player. I hope he does really well in New Orleans. Yes, he came back this summer he hosted his first camp in Columbia and made a point to come back to Columbia. He has no ties there other than going to USC. He didn't have to come back there. And he told us when he was talking to us, took plenty of time to talk to media once again, remembered all of us, said hello, asked us how we were. And he said he wants to come back every single year because Columbia had such an impact on him, turned his career around, and he's going to stay attached to Columbia for quite some time. That's the thing, is like, I know what everybody said about QB1. I know what everybody said about Oklahoma, but I didn't see that guy.
The QB1 thing was so weird, too.
Yeah, like, and they still hold that against him.
They approached it, but they never really told everyone what it was. It was kind of like, what are we doing here? Which I get. I mean, he's also, like, he was a kid.
And then the things that came out that it's like NFL scouts holding that against him as he goes into the draft. It's like, he was, 17? Mm-hmm. What did you do at 17?
17.
Like, come on. I don't know.
Yeah,
I really liked him. I enjoyed covering Spencer Rattler. I hope he does very well in the league.
Okay, well, go back. Tell me about how. Yeah, sorry. I was like, we got to go there while we can.
But the keys, just based on the things that we've talked about this week, I mean, getting Lenore's clicking very quickly. I mean, you don't know how that's going to go.
Yeah.
I think he's a very good quarterback. Honestly, he's got a little bit more from a dual threat perspective than some other players have. He can run, he can pass, all of that. got to get him going, but you also got to protect him. The O-line really needs to give him that time to figure out what he needs to do. If he starts getting pounded early in the season, that's not going to work out well. But the bright spot, the defense is going to be the oldest it's been under Beamer. It's year 4 under the defensive coordinator, Clayton White. They're all really old. They're veterans. They're guys that decided to come back again. They had unfinished business. They want to be with this program and see it succeed. So the defense is going to be a big spot. So I'd say those are kind of the keys. And then, of course, Shane Beamer, special teams, Beamer ball. You never know what's going to happen there. I think he said something. They have the most blocked kicks in a while. I don't know the specific stat. He listed it off. He rattled off earlier this week. But the most blocked kicks dating like several seasons. Yeah. So when you get that Beamer ball going, it's exciting because it's like, okay, they're coming. Your punt might get blocked. But no, they put on an entertaining form of football. It's just they need to figure out how to win more games.
We will see how they fare in 2024. Julia Westerman, thank you for joining us. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Back into your Media Days Craze, powered by Gray Television. I'm Baillie Burmaster. I am joined now by Brian Milam, and we're going to talk some Kentucky football, not basketball. Although you don't like talking about basketball, despite the fact I have been told multiple times this week when talking to people, Kentucky does the best they can. They know they're a basketball school. What is that? Is that really a sentiment that's felt in Lexington?
In the 20th century, yes. But since the 21st century has rolled around, you think of Kentucky has been to more than a dozen bowl games, which, again, prior to the year 2000 was unheard of. You'd go a couple of times in the 70s, a couple of times in the 80s. You go twice in the 90s. I mean, it was sporadic. And now Mark Stoops, he has been at Kentucky since 2013, his first year. And the first year or two, you kind of take your licks, while you build the program. He's been to 8 straight bowl games now.
Yeah.
And he has done a marvelous job. And I don't think anybody thought when Mark Stoops took over that at this point he would be the longest tenured coach in UK history, the longest tenured coach in SEC of the current coaches, and have the Wildcats in 8 straight bowl games. Nobody saw that coming more than a decade ago.
As he heads into year 12, what are the feelings Kentucky fans have towards Mark Stoops? Because he really has just been a sound foundation for that program.
Well, I think that's the thing. He is the son of a coach. Sons of coaches want foundation first, stability, solidarity, and then what the success will follow. I think when you look at Mark Stoops, he's a Big Ten guy now. He played at Iowa. He grew up in Ohio. He wants control. He wants to establish Kentucky football as more than just a school known for 1 or 2 sports. Baseball went to the College World Series, by the way, so it's wide open. But Mark Stoops has done a marvelous job, and he has been able, for a guy who doesn't like to change, I think, he has been able to adapt. He is still adapting to this new NIL world, as we all are. But he wanted to come to Kentucky and run an air raid offense. That didn't materialize, really. So what do? Ground and pound, which is what he likes to do, is dominate that line of scrimmage.
Yeah, when you look at this team and what Mark Stoops has done going into this year 12 for him, what do you like the most about this Kentucky team? It seems like their defense could really be a strong point.
Well, that is what Mark Stoops wants to establish all the time. Yeah, if you score 40 points a game, great. But he wants to make sure that any opponent is 21 and under. He wants to make sure we'll give a cheap touchdown. That happens. He wants to assert the defense. And Kentucky, especially up front and with the linebackers and then Maxwell Hairston in the backfield, the defensive backfield, they have got some pieces here. And I think when Kentucky is its best, they are a sleeper team in the preseason. I think you look at the preseason votes that'll come out later today, tomorrow, Saturday, whenever. And I think you'll see Kentucky about number 8, 9, 10. And then by the end of the year, you're like, wow, they're number 5 maybe, number 4. They have always done that.
And I don't know if you feel like this, but, as the weeks progressed, we talk about all these teams, and all the storylines, whether it's Kalen DeBoer and Nick Saban retiring, whatever it may be. Something that's kind of fascinated me is the fact that Kentucky, from a bigger scale here, I know you're in Lexington, so you're covering them, but I feel like they haven't been mentioned that much. And that's weird to me because this is a team that you just said is a sleeper team and should not be overlooked.
But it's the way it is every year. And it's going to be that way until Kentucky can crack the Alabama bubble, that Auburn, the Florida, Tennessee, now with Texas and Oklahoma, it does not get any easier. But if you go back and look in the Mark Stoops era, he has had those big wins. Not enough, not what he would want. He wants to win them all. But he has finally broken the Tennessee curse more than once, more than twice. He's beaten Florida, ending a 36-year drought. I mean, so Stoops has put Kentucky onto the SEC football map. Now, where are they on that ladder? Again, as you mentioned, nobody talks about Kentucky. Mark Stoops wants it that way. Nick Saban
Fly under the radar.
That's right. Nick Saban always talked about the rat poison and all of that. Well, Stoops likes to be the underdog. He's a blue-collar guy at heart. He wants to raise a blue-collar team with NFL potential. But, you're right. When you look at the first team, second team, third teams, whatever, you're not going to see many Wildcats. But at the end of the year, if they get what they want, especially if Brock Vandegrift can materialize at quarterback and Chip Trainum at running back, wide receivers are solid, defensive line solid, offensive line for the most part is pretty good. Linebacker, I'm telling you, they could be that team that, remember back in July we talked they were that team that could win 8 games or 9 games? don't be surprised if they do.
Well, and you brought it up, Brock Vandergriff coming from Georgia. He was really beloved in Athens, just obviously was never going to play over Carson Beck, who was doing a phenomenal job. What has been said and what is to make of Brock Vandergriff? Is there excitement with this fan base about him?
I think there's excitement anytime you get something new, especially when Will Levis came to Kentucky from Penn State a couple of years ago, and no one says, well, this guy didn't even play at Penn State. Oh, he led you to the bowl game. Oh, wow, a huge game over Iowa. And then when Devin Leary comes in a year ago, I think there was so much expectation. I do not like expectation from fans and from writers, journalists, because we don't know what they can do yet.
Yeah.
Because he did not get much run at Georgia, but his dad.
And if he did, it was Ball State, UAB.
It was cigar time.
Yeah.
You know, it was like the cigar. We've got this one in the bag. So we have not been able to really see him. So I'm in the spring game. So I'm in practice a little bit. But until he gets under those lights and assumes the control of this ball club, everybody's going to say, what can he do? We'll find out soon enough.
Well, what would you say is the ceiling for this Kentucky team in 2024?
Well, for a team that has never gone to an SEC championship game, first off, there's been 3 years in the last 7 or 8 where Kentucky had to beat Georgia, either in Athens, in Lexington, to get that division crown. Didn't happen. I don't think SEC championship game, yes, that's the dream. But I think the realistic expectation, the ceiling, if you look at the schedule, it's a loaded schedule.
Yeah.
I think that if you get to 8 or 9 wins, if you get to double digits, it's been a remarkable year. But I think if you get to 8 or 9, that is the plateau for this ball club. That depends on the health of the guys up front, as we say every year.
And it's a longer season. We've been talking about that all day. It's going to change things. The strong will survive in the SEC. What do I mean by that? The teams that have the depth and can withstand some of those core injuries that are going to inevitably happen will be the ones who end up in the SEC championship or that 12-team format playoff. It's going to be very interesting to see how that impacts teams. But I think for these not smaller schools, but these schools that have the Vanderbilts, the South Carolinas, the lower of the totem pole within the SEC, they're going to struggle if they hit some serious injuries. Do you feel like Kentucky has the depth to withstand anything that comes their way?
Well, time will tell, because it's funny you asked that, because I was thinking, standing off camera, in 2003, 4, and 5, Rich Brooks was the coach, and he said, defensive line is our strong suit. We are loaded at depth. By week 3, they were decimated with injuries. And the defensive line became a sieve.
Yeah.
I mean, just like, hey, just run it here, just run it, and you're gonna score. Injuries, that is the one asterisk that nobody in this hotel can prepare for. Because what if it's J.J. Weaver? Oh, my gosh, now you just lost your big linebacker. Yeah. What if it's Deion Walker? What if it's De'Aaron Jackson? What if Maxwell Hairston is burned in the back and turns an ankle and he's gone for 3 weeks? What if? That's the old if-in game, as coaches like to say.
Yep.
And but I think as of now, they have enough depth, and that is the one thing that Kentucky has struggled with in the past. They have not struggled with that over the last 6-7 years or so.
Okay, so you were talking about their record. I want to run through their schedule.
Okay.
And you tell me if they win or lose.
Here we go. So we're doing this.
We're doing this right now. Southern Miss.
Win.
I'll say a win too. We can keep scores. South Carolina.
Win.
I think they win too. Georgia.
Next.
They lose. Ohio.
Oh, that's a win.
That's a win. At Ole Miss.
That, I'm going to say it's a loss, but UK has played Ole Miss tough.
Trap game maybe a little bit?
Maybe,
like
we'll see.
But
we'll
okay,
see.
I'm going to say lose. Vanderbilt. Win.
You got it, kiddo.
We'll go over it. At Florida.
Again, toss-up, because Florida...
I think it's a hard place to play, but Florida isn't Florida of the past.
But Kentucky has gone down there recently and won, so we'll see.
I'll give them a win.
See, I like your way of thinking.
Auburn.
I'm going to go with a loss on that one.
At Tennessee, I'm going L.
At Tennessee, got to give them a loss.
Murray State, I'll give them the win.
That's a win.
At Texas, loss.
Whew, that's tough. Going to Austin's not easy. It's not easy for anybody.
I need you to say it's a loss.
Kentucky has not beaten Texas since 1951. They haven't played since then. I'd say it's a loss.
It's a loss. Okay. And then Louisville.
Win. That is a win.
I'll go that too.
So what's that?
That's
7?
7 and 5.
And you've got an Ole Miss. You've got a game in there maybe that could slide either way again with injuries.
And that's
with
I'm big on it if it's an improvement from last year. you're trending in the right direction and no one should be fired. Not that I think Mark Stoops will
Oh,
be fired.
he's
but you get
solid.
what I'm saying. You get what
Sure.
I'm saying. Like usually in other circumstances. So that's improvement in my eyes. And who knows? Maybe Brock Vandergriff goes in there and lights it up. We'll have to see what happens.
Well, his father's a defensive coordinator, and the kid comes out as a quarterback. You know, he's got a great head on his shoulders. We've interviewed him several times, and but a lot relies on some of the new pieces. We know what Kentucky has already,
Yep.
but will the new additions live up to what UK needs them to do?
We will see. Brian, thank you for joining
you,
us.
Bailey.
Stick with us. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to Media Days Craze, powered by Gray Television. I'm Baillie Burmaster, and I'm joined now by Elijah Campbell and Jay Phillips of the co-host of 107.5 The Game. You guys are professional yappers. That's what I like to call the radio guys.
Ooh,
you
wow.
guys do this for a living. I just am a woman who talks a lot.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just a man that talks a lot that won't shut up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can relate. We can absolutely relate to
You
that.
get it.
Yeah.
My running gag is report cards as a kid. Jay's a good student, but he talks a lot.
Talks
and
too
I'm
much
like,
in
you know
class.
what? Now look at me, all those teachers in 3rd and 4th grade.
Tune in.
You know.
See what's up.
That's right.
It paid. It paid off. Annoying adults as a kid ended up paying off as an adult.
Now I get to annoy adults, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Now you get to annoy them by doing your hottest sports takes.
That's right.
And you've been in Dallas all week, broadcasting live. Biggest takeaways from the week as we kind of round out here in Dallas for the final day.
Ooh, my biggest one is that Texas, from a showmanship standpoint, from the adage of everything's bigger in Texas is true when it comes to the SEC. In terms of brands, they are SEC ready.
So you bought boots and a cowboy hat, is what I'm hearing.
Oh, I'm from Nashville, man. Yeah, I already
So you
had.
already
I
had
already
it.
had
You're
boots
locked
and a
and
cowboy
loaded.
hat. Yeah,
Okay.
I was like, coming out of the womb, I was gifted boots and a cowboy hat as kind of part of the Tennessee native ritual. But the thing with Texas here that I found really fascinating, which the thing I was most interested in, was now that the SEC is as big time as it gets. Media days are bigger. They're more like no one is showing Big 12 media days on a constant loop on ESPN, right? But they fit the mold of a program that is really big and commands a lot of attention. Whether or not they're going to be able to do that in their first year in the SEC, playing a full SEC
Because
schedule.
remember, they weren't doing that in the
another
Big
one.
12 until very recently under Steve Sarkisian. I
That's
just
right.
want to be very blunt about that.
Yes, absolutely.
And guess
yeah.
what? OU used to be that powerhouse, and even the recent years they had not because of Brent Venables taking over and kind of growing pains with that.
Well, that's where I am, Bailey, on this. Texas, to me, is a lot more. Elijah's right. Look, Texas, the brand, and Texas, the alumni base, and the spending power is gigantic. So is LSU. So is Florida. What do LSU and Florida do? They ebb and they flow. Yeah. They should always be great, but for whatever reasons, they're not. Texas is in the exact same boat. Meanwhile, here's Oklahoma, who I liken very much to an Alabama. They are consistent. They punch above their weight for the state that they are. Now, I know there's a lot of money in Oklahoma, too, but they've always had to compete, so to speak, against the resources of Texas and, to some degree, Texas A&M. And yet, which one's the better program? It's not even close, program-wise. Yeah. It's just not even close that Oklahoma is better. I think OU is more suited to the rigors of the in-and-out football because this is what they do. They have to go outside the borders. I tell Elijah all the time, and I've told people I work with for years, the program that recruits the state of Texas the best is the University of Oklahoma. And they find ways to make sure that they're better than you.
I agree with that in like a historic past sense of the last couple of years and so many years. Do you feel that's still to be true today with the you can't deny there is a trajectory for Texas and where they are under Sark right now and having Quinn Ewers.
And I think Elijah and I don't want to say we've disagreed slightly.
We differ a little bit.
I
think,
love
this.
Listen,
Let me just get in there and
this
start
is part of what
divide.
we do. I think, again, you can separate program and team.
Yep.
The Oklahoma program is better. The Texas team in 2024 should be better. Let's find out. Again, with the folks, a couple years back, Texas is back, and Sam Ellinger and those guys, and they weren't.
No.
Are they now? I don't know yet. Yeah. They got to go play football. Is Oklahoma? Yeah, I've been surprised, and I've told Elijah this. I've been surprised by the number of people around the conference that say, I just don't know if Oklahoma's ready for the in and out of the Southeastern Conference. And I just think to myself, of course they are, but I don't know. How good is Oklahoma going to be offensively? Elijah and I were talking this morning off air. You got a defensive-minded coach, but so did Alabama. So does Georgia now. I say did Alabama, with Nick Saban. But Nick was able to evolve. Kirby watched Nick's evolution and knows that he had to evolve in Athens, and he has. Brent better follow the same boat. And if he does, then they're going to be fine.
We're separating. I'm sorry. Yeah, separating. Yeah, team from program is really important right now because if you just look over the last 25 years of Texas, they've rarely, with the exception of winning the Rose Bowl in 2005, beating Michigan, following it up with a national championship, they rarely have followed up success really well. And that's how you end up recycling coaches like,
Well, you have the Vince Young and Colt McCoy eras, and you're like, yay. And then Mac Brown almost wins a national championship. And then after that, what happens? Tom Herman comes in, and they're irrelevant.
Last 10 years, before last season anyway, what was it, 5.3 losses a year at Texas?
They were averaging it.
That's for what they and A&M both, and we're not talking A&M right now, but, relative to expectation and resource.
Well,
the
money
results,
that's thrown at the program.
Yeah, the results aren't there.
No, absolutely not. And I think Oklahoma's very interesting because when they were led by Bob Stoops, and then they had the seamless transition to Lincoln Riley, and he's this quarterback guru pushing out Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, everything's great. Brent Venables comes in after Lincoln Riley's very sour exit, if you probably ask Sooner fans. And I don't want to say that the standard has lowered a little bit, but it does feel like there isn't that edge at specific units anymore. You look back and you can look at running back, and they had the Joe Mixons and Chamaje Perines of the world, and, it's that edge isn't there, and it's the same with quarterback. Now, I'm not saying they're a bad club. Obviously, they're transitioning in the right way, but I think you're right in the sense you have to see what happens when they actually get into the SEC play.
Yeah, so this Oklahoma team is so interesting, too, because they can be 10-2, and it's not going to surprise me. And they can be playing in Atlanta in December. The question is Jackson Arnold what he was supposed to be or panned out to be? And when you let someone like Dylan Gabriel walk through that door to go to Oregon, who has a really good chance, he might now be the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman, depending on whatever sports book you look at. If you let him walk, you better be pretty darn sure the guy that you have replacing him is going to make sure that your offense doesn't skip a beat, which is what tells me that they feel really good about Jackson Arnold. Now, we have a small sample size of how he was in the Alamo Bowl, which at times wasn't great. 3 interceptions, not ideal, but was able to make some plays that showed you why he was a blue-chip recruit. And if they have a year where he has some severe growing pains and has some really bad games against some really good SEC defenses, and they go 7-5, it's going to be an interesting dynamic between the fan base and Brent Venables because of what we've just established here, how great that program is historically. Since like the late 90s, they have not had consecutive years or even like a 2 and 3 year stretch where they're down. And this is a real possibility if this 19, 20-year-old kid who's taking, snaps can't get it done in the first year.
If there's less than 9 wins, it changes the conversation significantly in Norman because, again, of not just the expectation, but the factual expectation, if you will. I mean, again, winning 10 games is what they do, and even though the situations aren't the same for Oklahoma relative to Georgia a few years ago, they are kind of in the similar boat of, Georgia parted ways with Mark Richt amicably as best you can, while Coach Richt was winning 10 games a year and won the SEC 3 times. But what did he not do? He wasn't delivering the national championship, and Georgia folk knew they had the talent to do it. But for whatever reason, they were not. Kirby has unlocked that last little bit that needed to be done. Is Brent that guy? Because for all the greatness in the Big 12, it's been, 24 years since Oklahoma won a national championship. And that's a program that under Coach Switzer won a bunch, and before that, obviously. So while they are consistently great, they're not all the way up. And now it does get harder because
you're in the SEC,
and these teams play defense.
Yeah, and not to mention, if you are Oklahoma and you finish 8-4,
that's terrible.
That's not good.
Oh, that's terrible.
They're not happy.
No, that's terrible. Yeah.
And that would be a successful season in this league.
Correct.
Yeah, this year. Yeah.
Let's take the University of Tennessee, for example, right? Yeah. I mean, they went from being sick and tired of playing in the Peach Bowl and being 8-4 every year to where, we got to cut, ways of Philip Fulmer. And then it took like 3 different head coaches and a fan base that was starved for about a decade where they would have given up a body part to go 8-4 in this conference. Yep. They would have done some absolutely foul stuff just to win 8 games in this league. So if you slip off or even just a little bit and maybe have some mismanagement of leadership, 8-4 may sound not good to them right now because of where they've been, but it can be a hard climb just to get to 8-4 in this league with all the teams that are in it, with the scheduling luck you're going to have because there's no divisions anymore. So scheduling is going to be a lot different. But 8-4 might be one of those things that Oklahoma fans might think of now and start getting repulsed. But in like the first 10 years in this league, 8-4 isn't as bad as because that can get you in the playoff now, depending on how the season
well,
goes.
and there's going to be a couple teams from the SEC probably getting in that playoff with what all these schedules are panning out to be. Do you believe Sark when he says this is the deepest roster he's had this season?
That he has had? Yes, that he has had. And that's why I come back around to one of the things that we do agree on, the team versus program part of it all. I think Sark, like so many Nick Saban students, if you will. I don't want to say disciples all the time. Sark wasn't with him that long like Kirby was or some others, but he was there enough to realize, and we all know this, but if you don't have quality depth, you will not win this league.
No.
And you really won't even get into a New Year's Day Bowl scenario. You've got to have quality depth. And I'll liken it to what we saw at South Carolina under Steve Spurrier back in Columbia. I can remember times when guys would go down and the replacement was like just as good. And that's the rarity in South Carolina. That's why Carolina won, 49 games in a 5-year stretch. You had quality depth. You come to what Texas has, and maybe that's been part of it, Bailey. I don't know. I'll be honest. I follow Texas because I follow college football, but now we've got to follow them a lot more closely. But you look at what's going on when it comes to depth. If you don't have great depth, you will not win the SEC.
Before we get out of here, I want to know who is the quarterback you would choose in the SEC to be your quarterback if you got to choose just one.
If I got to choose just one, I think it might end up being Quinn Ewers. I think he might be the most well-rounded.
Over Carson Beck?
Because he's a better deep ball thrower.
Okay.
And Carson Beck, only about, 14% of his passes went over 20 yards. The offense doesn't need Carson Beck to do that. So it's kind of like the J.J. McCarthy thing last year. Michigan could win without him. They didn't need him to be great, but I think he can be in an offense that gives him the keys to be able to sling it whenever he wants or at will. I think just, to put a little spice on this, I think Quinn Ewers is maybe a little better of a downfield thrower. He's cut out the interceptions, and I think I'll lean Ewers here.
Jalen Milroe is the leading Heisman vote returner in America. And I love Jalen Milroe. I was a Heisman voter that put him on my ballot third last year. I was the outlier. I caught a lot of heat for it, but I love that kid and I think what he can do, how big a difference he made for Alabama. Now with the confidence that he has and an offensive-minded quarterback coach, I think he's going to do big things.
Do we give Jackson Dart any flowers?
Oh, yeah.
I'm a big Jackson Dart believer. I'm a Jackson
Dart
Dart
truther. And I love Lane.
No, you just like the mullet.
Yeah,
you're a hair guy, clearly.
I'm a hair guy.
I think you just like the
and
mullet.
that guy might have the best hair of anybody that walked in this building this week, and that's an objective opinion.
True. Yeah, that's probably true.
And he had a really good suit too. But on the field, I love his dual threat ability. I mean, this is a guy that when he scrambles can pick up 7-8 yards constantly, and he might have the best ensemble of weapons. So when we look at this at the end of the season, he might end up having better counting stats, cumulative stats, because Trey Harris probably doesn't get enough love for being a Biletnikoff favorite, I would say. I mean, him and Luther Burden, you have the two best receivers in the country in this league, and I don't think the separation between Burden and Harris is that drastic, right? I mean, we cover South Carolina. We know exactly how important Juice Wells was to this Carolina team, and he transfers to Ole Miss, and he might be the number 3 or 4 option on this team. That just goes to show Jackson Dart might have the best embarrassment of riches of people to throw to than anyone in this conference.
Hopefully they can wield it into something special in 2024. Jay and Elijah, thank you guys for joining
Bailey.
us.
Good stuff.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to your Media Days Craze. I am joined now by Dr. Katie O'Neill, the SEC Chief Medical Advisor. Thanks for joining me, Katie.
Of course, I'm glad to be here.
Talk to me about, you took the podium yesterday about just to update everyone on the status of medical and the student athletes and the surveys you do. Tell us about the latest work that's been going on with the SEC.
In the last year, our big focus has been our mental health survey and then also our medical timeout process, making sure that we're prepared for any sort of disaster that occurs on field or right off the field, and that our teams are ready in whatever city we might be playing in, whether that's a championship or just a regular matchup. So our medical timeout process, I really feel like we have that honed in. And then our mental health survey was put out to our athletes last September, got results back in October, started to share those results to our teams so that they could make changes if they needed to make changes or really focus on things that we were able to show them that the mental health survey showed for them. Yeah.
How long have you been doing the mental health surveys? Because I feel like mental health maybe 10 years ago wasn't as widely talked about and discussed as it was, but it's really been, I think, something that's useful for student athletes now to be aware of, and, always think about that for the future of yourself and just putting yourself first.
That's right. I think that mental health and wellness for the student athlete is something they really want to talk about now, and that's a culture change for the student athletes. So this was the first SEC mental health survey. The NCAA had put out larger surveys to Division I athletes, but we really felt like we needed to get some more concise information for our schools. We were able to send the survey out to all SEC athletes and then give schools their comparison. So how do you compare to the total population of SEC student athletes? One of our most interesting finds was we had a school whose student athletes said, "We love the flyers that the mental health team puts out." And so when we asked them, how do you get your information? This school particularly said, "I get information from the flyers." No other school had that kind of survey reaction. So we said, well, we need to get your flyer and let everybody else know you must have these amazing flyers. And it was a simple kind of trifold that just told some background about their mental health counselors, but really focused on what they like. What are their interests? What sports did they play? And it helped those student athletes pick the best counselor for them.
Yeah.
And they really like that. So those are the kind of things that we learned that we were able to share and hopefully improve everybody's program.
And what kind of questions are in these surveys that you're asking the student athletes right now? Because I'm sure as much as the game evolves, whether it is football or soccer or just basketball, other sports, it's ever changing. And so you kind of have to direct that with the survey, I'm assuming, as well.
Right. We wanted to know about what their perception of mental health, as you spoke earlier. What's your perception of mental health? Do you feel like you all have good mental health? Do you think that there are more resources needed? What's the difference between wellness and mental health in your mind, so that when we speak to the athletes about what we're trying to provide to them, are we talking the same language? There's so much that student athletes are keyed into every day. What's my schedule like? Am I getting enough rest? All of that plays into mental health. But when you say mental health, a lot of people tend to start to talk about suicide prevention.
Yeah.
So where on the spectrum do student athletes want us to meet them, and what are those resources that they're looking for? So a lot of the questions kind of geared into those sorts of ideas.
What kind of trends are you seeing now of difference maybe between the female athletes in college and the male athletes in college?
So our female athletes were far more focused on their schedule, their class schedule and then their practice schedule, and they wanted it to be routine, and they talked about the stress of when that routine breaks up, whereas our male student athletes didn't necessarily focus as much on the routine of their schedule. They focused more on the perception about mental health and changing that stigma. So different answers, which helps us, again, feed that back to our schools to say maybe you need to have two different ways in which you approach male and female student athletes.
This year, the college football landscape is shifting to a 12-team format for the playoff, which inevitably makes it a longer season. I had the opportunity to talk to Georgia head coach Kirby Smart about how that might affect their preseason. He said it's definitely going to be condensed and it's going to be different because injuries are going to be inevitable. How inevitable are these injuries going to be with the season being longer? I'm assuming there's facts or stats that can back up. The longer a season is, the more likely you might be to get hurt.
Yeah, I mean, right now we have individual schools data, which shows us that schools can trend their injury data over time. Anytime that you have multiple games in a row, you're going to see your injuries stack up, and then you have a break. You have your off week, and in that off week, lots of rehab occurs, and student athletes come back onto your roster. So how do you start to plan for that cadence as you approach the college football playoff, especially for people like Kirby Smart who are looking at, how do I need to look at my rehab schedule with my game schedule? injuries are inevitable, but injuries are preventable. And we've seen some of the best evidence come out of the NFL showing us how to prevent injuries. So we're taking that evidence to say, how can we incorporate that into the SEC way and hopefully prevent some injuries and allow our athletes to stay on the field.
What advice can you give to universities or athletes about, returning from injury if it does happen in the turn of the season? I think about a specific player with Georgia last year was tight end Brock Bowers, who had the ankle surgery. He was trying to come back, but he wasn't necessarily fully healthy. How do you anticipate with the longer schedule and injuries, the feedback you can give of, hey, maybe if it happens in week 2, you should chill out because you'll make it to week 8, and then, hey, who knows what you can inevitably be a part of if your team gets there.
Right. So what we've been focusing with when we talk to the student athletes is, first, you need to go into the visit and define your goal. And you need to let the healthcare professional talking to you that day know what your goal is. Is my goal to play this weekend? Is my goal to play for the next 3 years? What am I trying to achieve? Because when you state your goal, we can make a healthcare plan around that goal. And that goal is oftentimes made with your parents. Made with your coach sometimes, but made often with your athletic trainer, who can then say, is that goal achievable? Like, I know your injury and I know what you need to rehab. So taking your team, your healthcare team together and stating your goals so that anybody who's seeing you knows what you're after as an athlete.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dr. Katie O'Neill, for joining me. I appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I am joined now by Harold Grader, the Associate Executive Director of the AutoZone Liberty Bowl. That is a mouthful. That is the most I've had to say all day. But what a title for you, sir.
Well, on the last day, last hour, well done. Kudos to getting
Thank you.
all
We're
about
powering
that, Bailey.
through, Harold.
Thanks for having me.
No, we're so excited you're here. SEC Media Days taking over Dallas. What's your interpretation of this new look SEC?
It's really exciting to have two of the marquee brands in all of college athletics come into what is no doubt the number one athletic conference in the entire country, and to build on the history and the tradition and the legacy of the Southeastern Conference with Texas and OU. It's in the stratosphere, and the best wants to play the best, be associated with the best, and there's no doubt now that the SEC is that, and with Texas and OU, it only gets bigger and better.
It's also interesting, the AutoZone Liberty Bowl is always usually, correct me if I'm wrong, an SEC Big 12 matchup.
Correct.
Now you have two former Blue Bloods in the Big 12 coming to the SEC.
That's right.
But the Big 12 also looks different. Does that make you excited for whatever this matchup could be down the line?
Oh, absolutely. Before OU and Texas came in, there was only one SEC team that had never played in the AutoZone Liberty Bowl, and that was Florida. Now we have three. Texas and OU have never played in our game. Now, this is year 66 for us. We're the seventh oldest bowl game. So as we look down the road and continuing our relationships and partnerships with the SEC and the Big 12, we hope someday to have
that little
Texas
rematch.
OU, and we wouldn't mind having Florida in our game someday. But these two fan bases, obviously, in our world, in the bowl world, to be able to drive to the destination, and obviously both Texas and the state of Oklahoma, you can drive to our city and experience everything that is Memphis in the AutoZone Liberty Bowl.
Something I was stewing over a little bit when thinking about the AutoZone Liberty Bowl was the fact that, when there was a lot of hard feelings when OU came to the SEC, leaving Oklahoma State behind because Bedlam is one of those big rivalries in the Big 12. What if there was to be a match where it was OU and Oklahoma State in the AutoZone Liberty Bowl, and you get to relive Bedlam a little bit?
That would be an interesting conversation to have. Now, would one side or the other not want to do that? You never know.
Oklahoma State's been vocal about they don't want to play OU.
But potential conversations like that are great for sports radio, for sports fans to kick that around. You never know. Interesting conversation.
Matchup,
we'll put that one on the memory pad there, should that opportunity ever come up.
How do you anticipate bowl season to look different this year with the fact that we're moving to a 12-team format playoff? It's a longer season. No one really knows what that scheduling is going to look like. Do you anticipate that bowl season will still have the drive it does despite there being a new format?
We think so, and Sam Pittman was very poignant earlier today in his comments about the bowls outside of the playoff, that we still need to focus on the bowls. And one of my points that I make with folks is there's certainly going to be so much exposure and attention to the 12. Who's going to be in that 12-team playoff, the expanded playoff? But there are 70-something other colleges and universities that want to play in a bowl game, have those extra practices, have the bowl experience, have that celebration at the end of the year for a successful year with their fans. So that's going to continue. Again, certainly the 12, there will be incredible focus on that. It won't impact us, I don't believe, as far as what we do mechanically, having excited fan bases and excited teams. We may all have to work a little bit harder to get some media attention. That goes with it. But we're going to be there. Speaking for the AutoZone Liberty Bowl, again, we're the seventh oldest. We're going to showcase our city, showcase everything that we have to offer, showcase St. Jude Children's Research Hospital to the fans and the teams that come to our city. So that doesn't change. But we know that, again, that excitement for what is bowl season and the bowl experience, that is not diminished at all.
SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey talked in depth about NIL, the state of college football, whatever it may be, et cetera, et cetera. I'm curious, how has NIL impacted bowl games specifically? I know bowls, a lot of times they'll give prizes and whatnot to the athletes. Has any of that really impacted how these, bowl entities can operate?
Some bowls have been impacted
Yeah.
in these recent past years with players opting out. You can't avoid that. That's just a part of the world we are now all working in and existing in. I think what you were referring to are the gift packages that we all are able to
TVs
give.
or recliners
right?
or watches or whatever it may
exactly.
be.
All of that fun, good stuff that we're by rule, we're able to do that legally and within the rules. As far as, again, the NIL transfer portal, opting out, all of that, we all have to deal with that. But I'm of the belief that when it comes to celebrating your team and the year that they've had, that you hope that key players don't select or choose to opt out.
Yeah.
But it's all about the overall experience for those teams, those players, with their fans, those universities, and all of the constituencies that follow that football team. Hopefully none of that is diminished, and so far it hasn't been.
That's amazing. That's what you want. You want it to be smooth sailing. I'm curious, when you talk about the AutoZone Liberty Bowl and bowl games in general, there's a lot of rich traditions.
Indeed.
What are your favorite traditions for the AutoZone Liberty Bowl?
Probably the number one for us is certainly the patriotic message, our founding principles of liberty, freedom, patriotism. But when it comes also to the Memphis community, showcasing St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, the number one research facility in the world, and of course they share their protocols with hospitals around the world. Very proud of that. And obviously in Memphis, it's about the food, the barbecue, but
barbecue.
But we're much more than that. We're a great foodie city.
Yeah.
But it's also about the music. And it's not just about the history of music, Elvis and the 50s and all of that. We have Stax and the great history of Stax. And more recently, Justin Timberlake is a young man from our city. And rap and all of that stuff. We are what I would refer to maybe the United Nations of music. We have it all. Uptown Funk.
Yeah.
My friend Boo Mitchell was one of the co-producers of that. That's a Memphis music product. So, there's a great history there and a legacy, Sun Records and Stax and all of that, but recent music as well, and current day music and current stars. And Memphis is a great music city, so we try to showcase that as well.
What is probably the best entity that the players get to enjoy when they get to be in town, whether it is the barbecue, the music? You can't go there without talking about Elvis.
Yeah, probably. The coaches may not like this, but probably Beale Street. It's
no, they definitely would not like that, but you're probably not wrong.
And Bailey, I'm sure they're just down there as an educational experience.
Looking around.
Yes.
Not partaking in anything else, and if they are, it's simply just a good water.
There you go.
With
Absolutely.
some ice.
And, again, that all ties in the food experience, the music experience. That's what we're about in Memphis.
I love that. We are at SEC Media Days. Before we wrap up, I want to get your hot take of who's the top dog to beat. Who are the teams you're watching in this year's SEC?
Obviously, I think Georgia's the easy number one. I saw what Coach Saban predicted or
Georgia and Texas.
Selected Georgia, Texas. You got to think Texas, new to the conference. Not surprised, folks, but of the two teams.
Well, it's surprising because in the Big 12, they weren't the top dog always. Over the years,
Sark
it was
has done
Oklahoma.
a great job getting his team SEC ready. Oklahoma right there. As far as I think they will have four.
Mm-hmm.
I think LSU is going to be in the mix. Ole Miss is going to be in the mix, along with Georgia, Texas, Alabama as well. It's going to be an exciting year in the SEC, and the expanded playoff obviously gives more opportunity, and it's going to be a race to the end, and we look forward to our piece of bowl season coming up on December 27th.
Ain't that the truth? Well, thank you, Harold,
Thanks,
for joining
Bailey.
me so
You
much
bet.
here on the stream. We are going to wrap here on your 2-hour great television stream for Media Days Craze. That will do it for you guys. Thanks for joining us.